Mr. Leslie Cree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker. And we've reached that stage in the year again when we have to allow the main estimates and associated legislation through the budget bill tomorrow to pass. Despite having voted against the four-year budget in 2011 and having expressed serious concerns about the various aspects of that budget, we have little option than to raise these concerns once again and move on. The Minister will be pleased to know that. This stems from the fact that we have a financial process, and again the Minister will have recognised me on this before, which is not fit for purpose. I've said that many times in this House and indeed on many budget debates throughout the years. Good work has been done by the Finance Committee in the past in an attempt to remedy this. Indeed, an inquiry was taken forward into the role of the Northern Ireland Assembly in scrutinising the Executive's budget and expenditure, and recommendations were made. Those recommendations included that formal agreement was needed on a regularised or structured budget process. As well as that, an early formal stage within that process was felt necessary to give the Assembly the opportunity to influence Ministers' thinking, if that is possible, and to enhance effective scrutiny. We then have the review of the financial process, which the Department of Finance and Personnel is taking forward on behalf of the Executive. Its terms of reference state that the overall aim of the review is to examine and make recommendations on the options to create a single, coherent financial framework which is effective, efficient and transparent, and enhances scrutiny by and accountability to the Assembly, taking into account the needs of the Assembly. Both the recommendations of the inquiry and the stated intention of the review of financial processes are laudable and would undoubtedly improve the situation. Not least, it would make debates like this today and tomorrow more meaningful. But the question remains, what has happened to these vital pieces of work? The Committee of Finance and Personnel inquiry sits on a shelf somewhere, and the review of the financial process is being frustrated by the Sinn Féin Education Minister, who refuses to have transparency with regard to his department's expenditure. This is unacceptable. There has been much talk recently of a rotation of the Finance Ministry by the DUP, and I hope that a legacy of Sammy Wilson's time in office is not the fact that he could not carry through this vital reform of the Assembly's financial dealings. Mr. Principal Deputy Speaker, returning to the motion before us today, the Minister is seeking the Assembly's approval of the 2013-14 spending plans of departments and other public bodies as set out in the main estimates. That combined sum is £8,271,268,000. This is a vast amount of money, and one which should be allowed to be adequately scrutinised by this Assembly. That is simply not the case at present. However, so as not to complicate matters or jeopardise the drawdown of funding by departments, but in the full knowledge of our previous opposition to the four-year budget and the concerns which many of my colleagues will outline over the course of the next 2 days, we will not obstruct the budgetary process at this stage. I want to go on to mention in closing just a few areas relating to the main estimates where I would welcome clarification from the Minister when he responds to this debate. Firstly, we recently had the announcement from the First and Deputy First Minister on the Together Building a United Community strategy. However, from my membership of the OFM-DFM Committee, I am aware that it has not been factored into any budget as of yet. Assuming that some or all of the projects will be up and running in the incoming year, and bearing in mind that Junior Minister Bell claimed that £500 million would be allocated to it, some detail would certainly be interesting given the lack of consultation thus far with other parties. Secondly, the Minister has been granted additional infrastructure of over £200 million from the Treasury through bond consequentials. Can he outline what specific project that money will be made available for? I believe that it is important to see it making a tangible difference and not simply being evaporated into the Minister's coffers with little or no transparency. Lastly, the situation as regards the legal dispute to the European grant to the Titanic project was raised during the previous budgetary stages. Indeed, Mr Bradley has raised it here this afternoon. Looking ahead, I would mention the Minister's explanation of the current position of this £18 million request from the Enterprise Minister. And I know that he has told us in the past that it has to be for another project which is included already in the budget to be a net saving, but perhaps he'll clarify that. Thank you very much, Mr. President, Deputy Speaker.